Hello everyone, this is Sahana, your social science tutor from Vista Learning, and we are here to provide quality education for all of you out there from class 1 to class 12. Now you can watch all our videos exclusively on a website application, that is www.we-learning.in. So what are we going to do today? So all these things what I told you, you'll have to remember that, okay? And also please do subscribe, share the message and spread the word, please. Right? Okay. So what are we going to do in today's class? So yeah, so this is the last revision class, basically the last chapter in term 2 of history, that is the age of industrialization. So this is the chapter which I'm going to deal with. So the age of industrialization. So how did it start? In what period? What happened? How did it affect India? What were we exporting, importing? So things like this. Then how did it fall? So all of these things we'll be studying in this particular chapter in detail, right? Yes. So before that, I just want to tell you, like I've told you in my previous videos, so the social science code is code 087. This is very, very important. So please don't forget this. And the learning objectives of the age of industrialization chapter is, so we'll have to be familiarized with the, just a minute. With the proto-industrial phase and early factor system. So all this they have given it in your, you can search it in your CBSE website. So you can get these learning objectives. So familiarize with the process of industrialization and its impact on labor class, and enable them to understand industrialization in the colonies with the reference to textile industry. So all these things are your learning objectives of this particular chapter. So which they've mentioned it. The CBSE board has mentioned this, right? Yes. So mainly, so no need to focus about all that. So mainly we'll focus on this. So what we're going to study on this in this particular session. So in this chapter, we're going to study activities before the Industrial Revolution happened. So what were the activities? And hand labor and steam power. That means how did people work mechanically and in terms of industrialization with machines and all those things. Industrialization in the colonies. Okay, mainly you'll be studying about India also there. Then factories come up. How did actually factories come into existence? How did they rise? And the peculiarities of the industrial growth. What were the peculiarities of the growth of industries? So definitely it can just not be one side, no, like only good things which is happening. So there'll have to be a little bit other side also, peculiarities, bad things. So things like this also happen, which we'll be studying in this chapter. Growth and market for goods. So all these things you'll be studying it in this particular chapter. After I explain all of these things, I'll also be solving few questions in the sense, very important questions, which is there backside your textbook. And why I chose them, because most of them are repeated multiple times in your previous question papers. All the questions which is there behind, and it's nice. It's all long answers so that you can pick the short answers from that aptitude type of question. So I felt that is really good, and that was more than enough. Which is why I've picked that, and I'll be giving you the answers, ready-made answers. Okay. Yes. So this is the thing. So shall we start? Shall we start with this particular chapter, the very last chapter? Yes, I am excited. How about you? You should be definitely more than me. So first we'll study what is industrialization. So I've just put the main points from each topic so that it becomes easy for you when you read this. When you go through the slides, the PDF format which we upload. So when you go through it, so it becomes very easy for you, which is why just main points I've put wherever it is required, I've elaborated there. Right? Yes. So production of goods with the help of machines in factories is called as industrialization. So basically from manpower, we are going to the electronic power. So there's a shift. Right, so we'll be using machines there, and that is basically called as industrialization. So the first industrialized nation was Britain. Understanding? So these are all some minute things which you'll definitely have to keep in your mind. And features. So what were the features of industrialization? So handmade goods to machines made goods in factories in a large scale production. So handmade goods were there before, but now it is becoming machine made goods. That too, it is in larger quantity. So the production what is happening is larger when compared to handmade goods. The machine made goods is larger. And it started in England, so in later parts of 18th century. So it basically started in England, and it spread through other parts in the in which century? In the 18th century. So in course of time, it affected all systems of production. So over a period of time, so there used to be just one or two things which people manufactured a lot, and which was being sold a lot or taken a lot, and some of the times the other factories or the other system productions fell down. Okay, so this is the features of industrialization. Next, production happened in 17th century, where artisans worked for merchants to produce goods and took raw material from merchants for production. That means, so you know what are artisans, right? So basically they are the artists who make any sort of things through hand, mostly through hand. So they are artisans, right? So they are work for merchants. So they worked for merchants to produce goods and took raw material from the merchants for production. So they were the ones who used to work for the merchants, and merchants used to go and get them goods. So this used to happen during the 17th century. So their cottages just turned out to become factories. So they didn't have separate places to construct a factory again, build a factory again. So what they did, so their huts or the cottages, what was there, that was only made into factories. So association of even okay, before going to this point, I want to tell you, even now most of the people I have seen personally, most of the people, factories are there in the house only. So in one corner there will be a house, people who are living, and the rest of the part of the house will be entirely made into factory. So I've seen this happening mostly for the silk factories. So this happens now also. Okay, so association of producers, trained craft people, maintain control over production. Restricted entry of new traders was also made, and also this period saw the rising of factories during the 17th century. So with all these features, so they took care that overproduction is not happening, and people are trained better. So they're trained, overproduction is not happening, restricted entry for the traders. So all these things, it somehow gave them a lot of benefits, and that is how the factories started rising up during this particular period. Understood? Next one is the coming up of the factory. So in the 1730s, so the earliest factories in England were set up. So when? So in 1730s, but only in India it was in the late 18th century. The number of factories multiplied. So though it was late, the number of factories what got existed or got multiplied was more during that time, and that too within a shorter period of time. So cotton was the first symbol of the new era, and its production boomed in the late 19th century. So you know that, right? So you already know it. We produce a good quality cotton. India produced a good quality cotton, which was known then only. So in the 19th century, so we used to produce a good quality of cotton then. Richard Arkwright created the cotton mill, where costly machines were set up and all the processes were brought together under one roof and management. So he was the person who took care of all these things. So he was Richard Arkwright. So he was the one who created the cotton mill, and there were a lot of costly machines also which was used, so that they get the good output, and the labor cost also decreases, because there are high-end machines which work by themselves. So why need to waste money on workers, right? So this was their plan. So the pace of industrial change. So what was the pace? What was the speed? Whether it literally just grew like this or whether it take time. So all of that we'll see, okay? So first in Britain, the most dynamic industries were cotton and metals. So in in Britain, it was mostly the cotton and the metals. Okay, so cotton was the leading sector in the first phase of industrialization up to 1840s, followed by iron and steel industry. So this was in Britain. Next one, the new industries found it difficult to displace traditional industries. Are you understanding? So the new industries actually found difficult to displace these traditional industries which were there from first, because they actually played a very important role. So it was not that easy to just go and break those, just because it's old, to go and break those industries and build a new one, because they were very reputed and the quality of work they used to do was more. So that was pretty difficult for them. And in the third, the pace of change in the traditional industries was not set by steam-powered cotton or metal industries, but they did not remain entirely stagnant either. So they went in a moderate pace. So they did not completely stop or they did not completely gain. So they went in a moderate pace. Okay. And fourth, technological changes occurred slowly. And a steam engine invented by James Watt had no bias for years. So new technologies were slow to be accepted. So this was the reason. So now also though we have 5G, but we use, most of them feel happy with 4G. Yes or no? Because we know 4G is actually working pretty good. And if 5G comes, there's a lot of rays which is released and it will affect the birds. So all of those things also we know secondary. So the same thing happened then also. So when there was a lot of industrial changes, industrial inventions, people could not accept it all of a sudden like that, because they were so much used to the older ones, and they used to actually mint money through it. So they did not literally care about it. So it went in a very moderate pace. Okay, the industrial change. So it's not like it just boomed like this, right? So next is hand labor and steam power. So there are two things, hand labor and steam power, basically mechanical and electronical. So those things. So what's the difference? So in Victorian Britain, there was no shortage of human labor, and in many industries, the demand for labor was seasonal. So it was definitely seasonal. So when the cotton harvest is done, they need more people. When they're still planting the seeds now of cotton, and if you expect more labor to be there in the industry, no sense, right? So it was definitely seasonal. So the range of quality of products could be produced only with hand labor. So the quality work, how much ever technology you were using, it was only made through the hand labor. Okay, and there was also a lot of demand for intricate designs. Intricate is nothing but a very detailed designs which is done through your hands. So most of the demand was for that, for the intricate designs, and upper classes also always preferred the product which is handmade. So all of this again made the industrialization change what was there, made it slow pace or moderate pace. Understood? Next, life of workers. Yes, so this much we'll have to write, so you better learn it now. So if they ask you to explain the life of workers, you'll have to write it like this, which is why I've just kept it like that for you, so that you should know how much is there, how much you should actually write in like that. Okay, so the workers' life were affected by the abundance of labor in the market. Lot of workers, that is the abundance. So to get a job, workers should have existing networks of friendship and kin relationship in a industry. So it was basically difficult for them to get a job because there were a lot of people. At the same time, a little bit of influence also was needed in terms of friendship, relationships with the factory. So till the mid-19th century, it was difficult for workers to find job. And in the early 19th century, wages were increased. So in the early 19th century, the wages were increased. So the fear of unemployment made workers adjust to the introduction of new technology. What do you mean by that? The fear of unemployment. That means already you have a job, but if that goes, there's nothing else, no? So already people out there are struggling so much to get a job, and you have a job and you don't want to learn technology, means that does not work. So this forced them to learn technology, to learn how to use the, not just the handmade work, but also the machinery work. So spinning jenny, so this is a tool or an instrument which is used to weave, okay, woolen clothes. So spinning jenny was introduced in the woolen industry. So after, again, that's a symbol of rising in technology. So after the 1840s, building activity intensified in the cities, opening up greater opportunities for unemployment, right? So roads were widened, new railway stations came up, and railway lines were extended, tunnels were dug, drainage and sewer laid, rivers and banks. So all were these some of the improvements which happened then. Understood? So this was the life of workers. They didn't have job. If they had job, they had to learn technology so that they get along with the factories. Understood? And they've really worked hard like anything. So next is industrialization in the colonies. So textile industry was the center of industrialization in India, definitely because of cotton mainly. So finer variety of cotton from India were exported outside. So the finer variety, the variety which we exclusively have. So what we used to do, we used to export it outside because they would not be having that or in a very less quantity. So we used to export it outside. So a vibrant sea trade was operated through pre-colonial ports. That means before even this colonization period started. So in the pre-colonial, that means even before colonization, the ports, the sea routes, what was there, the ports which were built before the colonization. So in those routes, there was a lot of trade which was happening. So what happened to the weavers then? So East India Company appointed Gomasters. Okay, so it is named as Gomasters to collect supply from weavers. So the weavers used to weave, these people used to go and collect the product which they have given to them. Understood? So weavers lost bargaining power and lost lands for settling loans. So this again hit the stomach of the workers, and you know, whatever they do out of their hard work, they used to do and ultimately give it to the Gomasters, and they used to go and give it to the Britishers. So ultimately the worker who's there, he was a poor fellow, he couldn't bargain anymore, and he lost all his lands in terms of spending loans, the debt basically. So this happened during the industrialization period in the colonies. So now what are Gomasters? I talked about Gomasters, no? So they used to come collect the product from the weavers. So who was appointed by the East India Company, basically the Britishers. So what is Gomasters now? So Gomasters were paid servants. So they were the paid servants whose job was to supervise weavers, collect supplies and examine the quality of the clothes. So this was their work. So somebody else used to weave it. It was basically the weavers, but these people's work was only so much. Just supervise it, collect it, examine the quality of the cloth and go and give it back to the Britishers. The aim of the East India Company behind appointing Gomasters was to work out a system of management and control that would eliminate competition, control costs and ensure regular supplies of cotton and silk. So these were the main things, crops or the textiles which we had. So cotton is a crop, silk is ultimately a worm. Okay, so these were the main textile things which we had it in a lot, and that too with a good quality. So which is why they were literally pouncing on it and they wanted the best of it. Soon there were clashes between the weavers and the Gomasters, who began ill-treating the weavers. So when they tried bargaining and all of these things, so these Gomasters, they started ill-treating them. So they did not allow the company weavers to sell their produce to other buyers. So basically, they were bad people, and they used to listen to these East India Company people, and they used to just randomly go fall on these workers, which they did not like, and there was a lot of torture which was given to them. There was no fare which was given to them. So ultimately, there was a clash. So once an order was placed, the weavers were given loans to purchase the raw material. So there were loans which was given to buy the raw material for the weavers. Once they buy, again they used to literally act like animals with those workers to take back the loan money and also the product which they've given. So weavers who had accepted loans from the company had to hand over the cloth they produced to the Gomasters only. So this is what I've been telling you from that time. So they had to hand it over to the Gomasters only, the products what they've made. So the weavers were forced to sell their goods to company officials. When the American Civil War broke out and cotton supplies from the US were cut off, Britain's demand for raw cotton from India increased. So during the American Civil War, so there was a breakout, and that time the Britain came up and they asked for a lot of cotton in India. So the export rate what was there of cotton from India was even more, right? So next one is Manchester comes to India. So in 1772, Henry Patullo said that the demand for Indian textiles could never reduce since no other nation produced goods of the same quality. So it was never like, okay, today we have business and tomorrow we don't have business in our hands. So it was never like that, because constantly we used to give a lot of good quality cottons for exporting, and people definitely used to come back to India because this kind of quality they used to not get it in any other part of the world, right? So but unfortunately in the beginning of the 19th century, India witnessed a decline in textile exports. So in the early 19th century, exports for British cotton goods increased dramatically. So for the exports of British cottons. At the end of the 18th century, import of cotton piece goods was restricted into India. So import of cotton piece goods was restricted into India. Understood? Yes. So next in India, cotton weavers faced two problems mainly. So the two problems were they could not get sufficient supply of raw material of good quality. You know the reason why I've told here. So factories in India began production, flooding the market with machine goods. So these were the two problems which was faced by the common weavers. Understood? Yes. Next one is factories which came up during that time. So industries were set up in different regions and the first cotton mill came in Bombay, that is present Mumbai, in 1854. So the first jute mill came in Bengal in 1855, and in 1830s to 1840s, Dwarkanath Tagore set up 6 joint stock companies in Bengal. So these were the factories which came up during that time, which is very, very important and big, huge one. Next one is the early entrepreneurs, so who are doing their own business, entrepreneurs. So the history of trade started from the late 18th century when the British in India began exporting opium to China, and took tea from China to England. So basically it was a barter process, give and take process. Opium is a type of plant. Okay, so this was supposed to export from British in India. Okay, so from British from India to China, and took tea from China to England. So Britishers, see how intelligent they are. They used to take things from us and give it to China, and whatever things China is giving, they used to take it to England but not to India. So that is the tea. So some of the businessmen who were involved in these trades had a vision of developing industrial enterprises in India. So in Bengal, Dwarkanath Tagore made his fortune in the China trade. In Bombay, Parsis like Dinshaw Petit and Jamshid Tata, okay, and built huge industrial empires in India. So Seth Hukumchand, Marwari businessman, set up the first Indian jute mill in Calcutta in 1917. The opportunities of investments in the industries opened up of many of them, said the industries. So this was about the early entrepreneurs. Understood? So all these names you'll have to remember. There's nothing to explain in this. So starting from Dwarkanath Tagore and till Hukum Chand. So all these people are very, very important, and you'll have to know it, the early entrepreneurs, right? Due to colonial power, Indians were banned from trading with Europe in manufactured goods and had to export mostly raw materials and food grains, raw cotton, opium, wheat, and also indigo, which is very, very costly, which was required by the British. So other than that, whatever British needed from our own country, we had to give them that, right? So 3 of the biggest European managing agencies are Bird Hillers and Co., Andrew Yule and Jardine Skinner and Co., who mobilized capital, set up joint stock companies and also managed them. So these are the people who mobilized the capital and set up joint stock companies and also managed them. So really great people. To handle so many factories and to manage so many people and bring out something like this is really awesome, and great people these people are. Okay, so this is one thing. Next, where did the workers come from? Where did they come from? Yes. So as the factory started expanding, the demand for workers increased. Definitely. So when you have a land, also when the land is increasing, so the person whom you require to sow the seeds is more than compared to the just one plot of land. So the same way here also. So over 50% workers in the Bombay cotton industries in 1911 came from the neighboring district of Ratnagiri, while the mills of Kanpur got most of their textile hands from the villages within the district of Kanpur. So as the news of employment spread, workers traveled a great distance in the hope of work in the mills. So if they're asking you the answer, like in the sense in your examination, this particular question, if you write so much answer, it's more than enough. When they ask you where did the workers come from, so this is the answer. Understood? So even after the demand of workers increased, getting jobs was difficult. The numbers seeking works were always more than the jobs available, right? Because mainly it could be a lot of population and things like that. So industrialists helped the jobber to settle down and provide them with money in need. So this was the help which they started to give. So next one is peculiarities of industrial growth. What were the peculiarities? So what was not normal? What was the peculiarities? So every Indian cotton mills made coarse cotton yarn. So yarn is nothing but it's a thread of cotton. Basically, they use it for weaving. So every Indian cotton mills made coarse cotton yarn. So it was every Indian cotton mills. So during the First World War, Manchester imports to India declined, whereas the Indian factories supplied goods for needs. Understood? So this is what these are some things which are very, very peculiar. Next, small scale industries predominated. So most of the industries were located in Bengal and Bombay. So it was in Bengal and Bombay, most of the cities. A small portion of total industrial labor worked in factories. Use of fly shuttle increased handicraft. So there's a fly shuttle also. So that's also an instrument where it made very easy for people to do weaving. So use of fly shuttle also increased the handcraft then. Market of goods. So advertisements helps in creating new consumers. So I hope you know. So advertisement helped in creating new consumers, and when Manchester industrialists began selling cloth in India, they put labels on the cloth bundles so that to make the place of manufacture and the name of the company familiar to the buyer. So all this is business tricks, so business strategies. So when buyers saw made in Manchester written in bold on the label, they felt confident to buy the cloth. So there was advertisement which was happening in terms of packaging, boxing, putting a cellophane tape, everything. So there was a lot of advertisement which was going. Understood? So the labels carried images and were beautifully illustrated with images of Indian gods and goddesses. So the printed image of Krishna and Saraswati was also intended to make the manufacture from a foreign land appear familiar to Indians. Understood? So manufacturers also printed calendars to popularize their products. So it's all just manufacturing skills and business skills. How do you put the product out into the market, and how will people get attracted to it and are going to buy? So all these are very important. Market strategies. So when Indian manufacturers advertised, the nationalist message was clear and loud: if you care for the nation, then buy only Indian products. So they literally started hitting the sentiment also in terms of love towards the country, patriotism. So they started hitting sentimentally, emotionally, so that they buy products. So advertisements became a vehicle of the nationalist message of Swadeshi. Swadeshi is within India. So what were the products which was growing, and what is its importance, why you should take it, why not the exported things? So all of these things we actually learned it from this particular session. Understood? Yes. So that is basically I've just given the main points of all the topics under the age of industrialization. So please do learn it, understand it. If you have any doubts, please do comment below, and I'm always there for you to help you out. Understood? So next one, as I told you, I'll just be giving the textbook questions for you, so that it becomes easy for you to study also. Understood? Yeah, so we'll start with the first one. Okay, yeah. Yes. So the first one, they've given explain, and they've given 4 to 5 questions. So you'll have to explain these questions. Okay. So women workers in Britain attacked the spinning jenny. So in Britain in the 19th century, the cotton condition of workers was bad, as mentioned below. So how? So abundance of labor affected the lives of the workers because the period of employment was less. So this is how you will have to write the answer. Sometimes the production of unemployment went up to between 35 to 75%. The fear of unemployment made workers hostile to the introduction of new technology. And then when the spinning jenny was introduced in the woolen industry, women who survived on hand spinning began attacking the new machines because the machine speeded up the spinning process and reduced labor demands, as by turning one single wheel, a worker could set in motion a number of spindles and spin several threads at a time. So it was also working according to the speed. The conflict over the introduction of spinning jenny continued for a longer period of time. So I've already told you what is the spinning jenny. It's an instrument which is used to weave, right? So it was about that. So next one, in the 17th century, merchants from towns in Europe began employing peasants and artisans within the villages. That means in the 17th century, they've again followed all of that. So what were the following factors? So the following factors were as a result of expansion of world trade and acquisition of colonies, demand of goods had increased significantly. So the merchants, however, could not increase production in towns of urban crafts, and trade glides were powerful. So they were really powerful. So these were associations of producers that trained its people and maintained control over production, regulated competition and prices, and restricted the entry of new people into the trade. So I'm just reading and going because I've already explained all of these things. So rulers granted different glides the monopoly right to produce the trade in specific products. So the output what was there, that played a major role. So that is how we go to the market, right? And that if it is nice, only people get attracted and they're going to buy things. So definitely the product had to be very good, really good. So it was therefore difficult for new merchants to set up business in towns. So they turned into countryside. So they went outskirts of the town. So they made into countryside. So in the countryside, the conditions were favorable for them, because in the countryside, with the disappearance of open fields and enclosure of common lands, the peasants were in search of alternative sources of income. Okay, so all these points you will have to include. Many peasants had tiny plots of land which could not provide work for all members of the household. So if just one plot is there and if there are 10 members, it does not work, definitely. So these peasants agreed to do work for the merchants because it was beneficial for them too. So why did they agree? Because it was beneficial. So one small plot of land and too many people to feed in the house means that does not work, no? So which is why he agreed. Too many, because they could remain in the countryside and could also cultivate their small plots of land. So along with this, they can also cultivate in their own land, right? So that was very important. So it enabled them to use full strength of their families as well. So the families also put in a lot of hard work and started helping them. See, the port of Surat declined by the end of the 18th century. So the port of Surat declined by the end of century due to the factors as mentioned below. So what were the factors? Before the age of machine industry, silk and cotton goods from India dominated the international market in the textiles. Understood? So the vibrant sea, I've explained all this to you, you remember, no? So the vibrant sea route operated through the main pre-colonial ports. Surat on the Gujarat coast connected India to the Gulf and the Red Sea ports. So by the 1750s, the network controlled by the Indian merchants was breaking down as the European companies gradually gained power, including concessions from the local courts as well as the monopoly rights to be. Understood? So these many points you will have to write it when they ask you this question. Understood? Next question, while Hooghly and Surat decayed, Bombay and Calcutta grew because now trade was carried through the new ports and was carried in the European ships. Right? So wherever there's a lot of trade which is happening, that port will definitely see a hike. So there will be a growth in that particular port. As a result of it, many of the old trading houses collapsed also. So thus, the export from Surat fell dramatically. In the last years of 17th century, the gross value of trade that passed through Surat had been 16 million. By the 1740s, it declined to 3 million. So from 16 million to 3 million, which was a huge loss. Fourth one, the last one. The East India Company appointed Gomasters to supervise the weavers in India. So the East India Company appointed Gomasters to supervise in India due to one following factor. That is, after establishing its political power in India, the company wanted to establish a monopoly right to trade. So they were greedy, obviously. So they also wanted to include monopoly right to trade. It proceeded to develop a system of management into control that would eliminate competition, which was very good thought which he put. So control cost and ensure regular supplies of cotton and silk goods, and this is did through the series of steps. So you'll be learning it in your higher classes. Understood? The most important step was to eliminate the existing traders and brokers connected with the cloth trade and establish a more direct control over the weaver. Sorry. It appointed a paid servant called Gomasters to supervise weavers, collect supplies, and examine the quality of work or the quality of cloth, what they're doing. So the weavers who had taken advances from the company had to hand over the cloth they produced to the Gomasta. Understood? This is very interesting, right? True or false against each statement. So at the end, okay. So at the end of 19th century, 80% of the total workplace in Europe was employed in the technological advanced industrial sector. That is false. The international market of the textiles was dominated by India till the 18th century. True. The American Civil War resulted in the reduction of cotton exports from India. So it's obviously false. The last one is the introduction of the fly shuttle enabled the handloom workers to improve their productivity, which is true. So they might ask you questions like this also. So please be prepared like this. So they might ask you this for 4 marks or for 2 marks also. So it's very important to learn it like this also. In terms of fill in the blanks, MCQs, true or false, very short answers, long answers. So in this way, if you study, it becomes very, very easy for you. Next one, explain what is meant by proto-industrialization. So even before setting up the factories, there was a large-scale industrial production for an international market, so for the people away from India or not of India. So this was not based on factories. So this was definitely not based on factories. So it was known as proto-industrialization. So it was the part of network of commercial exchanges. Merchants were based in towns, but the work was done mostly in the countryside. So the work was all done in the countryside, outskirts, and then merchants were based in towns. So merchants used to be there in the towns, and the people who are doing it, so had to be mostly in the countryside. What was the industrialists in the 19th century Europe prefer, hand labor or machine labor? So first one, extensive new technology. New technologies and machines were expensive, and so the producers and the industrialists were cautious about using them because they were costly, expensive. Costlier repair, the machines often broke down and the repair was costly. Less effective, they were not as effective as their inventors and manufacturers claimed. And the fourth one, availability of cheap workers. So people, peasants and migrants moved to the cities in large numbers in search of jobs. So the supply of workers was more than the demand. Therefore, workers were available at low wages. So there's nothing to explain here. So here I just want to see how I've prepared the answer and how have I written it, so that you write the same way in your exam. Understand? So the fifth one is a uniform machine-made goods. So a range of products could be produced only with hand labor. Machines were oriented to producing uniform standardized goods for the mass market, but the demand in the market was option for goods which intricate designs and specific shapes. So there will be specific shapes, and also intricate designs is nothing but, as I told you, those are the handmade detailed designs. So they had they had very good demand for them. And in the mid of 19th century, that is Britain, from instance, 500 varieties of hammers were produced and 15 kind of axes. So which is like really huge during that time. So this required human skill, not mechanical technology. The drawback was here, after studying so much about industrialization, at the last we studied, what was that? So he prepared all of that, but he couldn't prepare the breakfast and the this required human skill, not mechanical technology. Okay. Next one. How did the East India Company procure regular supplies of cotton and silk textiles from the Indian weavers? Yes, so this is the answer. Monopoly, right? Once the East India Company established political power, it asserted a monopoly right to trade. This is one point. Next is new system. After establishing monopoly over trade, it proceeded to develop a system of management and control that would eliminate competition, control costs, and ensure regular supplies of cotton and silk goods, because that was very, very important for them, and that was of good quality in India. So this it did through a series of steps. So don't mention all those steps, just writing the answer like this is more than enough. Just point wise, main points. Appointing Gomasters. So this is one more thing. So the company tried to eliminate the existing traders and brokers connected with the cloth trade. That's the cloth trade, and established more direct control over the weavers. So it appointed a paid second called the Gomasta to supervise weavers, collect supplies, and examine the quality of the cloth. Fourth point, system of advances. To have a direct control over the weavers, the company started the system of advances. So once an order was placed, so the weavers were given loans to purchase the raw materials for their production. Understood? So those who took loans had to hand over the cloth they produced to the Gomasta. So they could not take it at any other, they cannot take it to any other trader except to the Gomasta. So that was the rule which was made by East India Company. Next one is use of power. The places where the weaver refused to cooperate, the company used its policy. So use of power, the places where the weaver refused to cooperate, the company used its policy. Okay, so at many places, weaver were often beaten and flogged for delays in supply. So basically, it's police. So yeah, so the places where the weaver refused to cooperate, the company used its police, and they were basically beaten brutally when the supply was delayed. Understood? So next, why did the industrial production in India increase during the First World War? And the answer is decline of Manchester, increase in the demand for army. So rest is there. So we'll read this now. So with the British mills busy with war production to meet the needs of the army, Manchester imports into India declined. Next, what happens? Increase in the demand. So when it is declined, so obviously there will be increase in the demand. Right, so with the decline of imports, suddenly Indian mills had a vast home market to supply. So it was an advantage for us. So demand from army. So as the war prolonged, Indian factories were called upon to supply what need. That is jute bags, cloth for the army uniforms, tents and leather boots, horse and mule saddles, and the host of other items. Understood? So all this was needed. Yes. So the next one is new factories and downfall of British industry and boon for home industry. So new factories is nothing but, so new factories were set up and old ones ran multiple shifts, okay, so morning shift, afternoon, evening, like that, multiple shifts. That means it was doing really good. So many new workers were employed and everyone was made to work for longer hours. Over the war years, industrial production boomed. Next one, downfall of British industry and boon for home industry. So that is for us. After a war, okay. The next one is downfall of British industry and boon for home industry. That is for us, as I told you. So after the War of Manchester could never recapture its old position in the Indian market, unable to modernize and compete with the US, Germany and Japan, the economy of Britain crumbled after the war. Cotton production collapsed and exports of cotton cloth from Britain fell dramatically. So within the colonies, local industrialists gradually consolidated their position, substituting foreign manufacturers and capturing the home market. So this is the points which you'll have to include. Understood? Yes. So imagine that you have been asked to write, so this is the other question. Imagine that you have been asked to write an article for an encyclopedia on Britain and the history of cotton. So write your piece of information from the entire thing what you've studied now. So that's the homework for you. So you will have to do it. So just think about it and just put a note there from your side. What is your piece of knowledge after doing so much? What have you actually understood? How to write? What are the points? Everything I've mentioned. No? So we'll see how you'll do it. So that's a homework for you. Right. So done with the question answers from the backside question. So next is the conclusion. So we've studied all of these things. Before the Industrial Revolution, the coming up before the Industrial Revolution, we've studied two topics. That is the coming up of the factory, the pace of industrial change. Then we studied about hand labor and steam power. There we studied life of workers. And industrialization in the colonies, we studied about the age of Indian textiles, what happened to the weavers, Manchester comes to India, these things we studied. Then in factories come up. So we studied early entrepreneurs and where did the workers actually come from. And then the peculiarities of industrial growth, we studied small scale industrial predominate, and also we studied the market of goods. So yeah, this much we have studied. I hope you have understood everything. If you have any doubts, please do comment below. I'm always there, as I tell you always. So we are there here to help you out and clarify all your doubts. So yeah, that's it. And thank you so much for being there with me for the entire class. And here we complete the portions of term 2 history. Understood? So if you have any doubts, so after the class also anytime, basically it will be there on YouTube. So you can comment below, and we as I tell you all the time, we're there for you to help you. Understood? Yes. So that's it for the day. Thank you so much, everyone. Signing off, Sahana, and keep learning from Vista's Learn. Bye.